Hi guys, in this class we're going to be looking at the headstand and different variations of the headstand and how to build your headstand from the ground up. So the first thing to become aware of when you're doing a headstand is, first of all, you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. So if we look from the side and we stand, ideally the hips should be over the heels, shoulders over the hips, ears over the shoulders. So viewed from the side, there's a line running between those points. So we can just spend a moment to find that alignment. So if you rock forward, rock back into the heels, lift up the toes, spread them, then lean forward again into the balls of the feet, and then just gently press the toe tips into the floor and rock back. So most of the weight should be on the heels, a little bit of weight, the balls of the feet. Then from there, lift up the kneecaps. Then the pubic bone is going to drop down and go back. At the same time, the coccyx, the tailbone, is going to drop down and move forward. If you tuck under too much, the knees are going to start bending, which means that you've gone too far. So you want to keep the legs straight all the time. So just tuck the tailbone down and forward, but don't let the knees bend. The ribs will automatically come in, your core will automatically be engaged. Lift up through the collarbones, shoulders down the back. No need to pinch the shoulder blades together, so keep the back of the body wide. Ears over the tops of the shoulders, lengthening through the crown of the head. And this becomes your foundation for your headstand, forearm stand, and later will also be your handstand. So one of the common mistakes that people make is when they take the hands over the head is they let the hips sway forward or the lower back arches like this. So we're going to build the headstand today by working through the sun salutation. So we inhale and take the hands up. As you take the arms up, in line with the ears, don't let your ribs flare out. Don't let your lower back arch. And also, don't let your hips sway forward. So keep the hips directly over the top of the knees. As you take the arms up, so inhale, look up, and then exhale as you go forward. Imagine you're lengthening through the crown of the head. Again, as you inhale, lengthen through the crown of the head. And we can just step back. So we place the hands, shoulders come over the wrists. We step back. And this position here, the high plank, is very important for developing core strength and understanding how to move your body. So here it's just like we were doing while we were standing. The knees are lifting, slight tucking under, but not tucking so much that your knees bend. So you keep lifting the knees up, which moves the pubic bone between the legs. The ribs draw in, shoulders towards the hips, lengthen through the crown of the head. Now we're going to try and maintain this as we lower down to chaturanga. So we squeeze the elbows in. Notice my legs are still straight. I didn't let my back arch. So there's slight tucking in. And then we can go into our upward dog. Inhaling and back to the downward dog. So here in the downward dog, we'll try and find that same alignment. So we try and find a nice straight line from the hands through the arms, shoulders, ribs in, away from the floor, legs strong. If you need to, if the hamstrings are tight, you bend the knees in this position. And we can just lift one leg up, and this, try and find a nice straight line from your foot through to your hand. And then we change legs, lift the other leg, Again, here, so don't allow the hip to lift up like this. You keep the hip square, ribs in, pushing through the arms. And okay, so another good way to find that alignment is to do the kneeling dog. So the first variation we'll do is on the fingertips. You want to stay with the balls on the balls of the feet, knees under the hips. You take your hands forward and you spread the shoulders, take your head toward the floor, but at the same time, draw your ribs in. So the ribs are coming away from the floor like this. And you take a few breaths here. So what we're trying to avoid doing is this. Okay, so ribs in, keep the head in neutral. And then we try the same thing with the hands flat. So we spread the shoulders, take the head toward the floor, and then the ribs away from the floor. Keep the shoulders spreading. And this position will help you understand how to draw the ribs in and to move the tailbone down and forward. A great way to build your headstand and the strength for it is to work on the low plank. So we come into this position, interlock the fingers, shoulders over the elbows, and lift the knees. Keep the legs strong, curl the tailbone under, ribs in, shoulders towards your hips, and press up between the shoulders. And you want to get comfortable here, so you can stay 30 seconds, build it up to a minute. If you can't do that, you shouldn't really even be thinking about going onto your head. So after you finish your 30 seconds or 1 minute, you can come back to a downward facing dog. And in the downward dog, we'll work first on external rotation of the shoulders. So I'm going to try and bring the elbows down towards the floor, which spreads the shoulders away from the ears. And we're going to continue that movement until your forearms come onto the floor. Okay, so your shoulders are now spread away from your ears. And then from there, lift back to the downward dog. And we'll repeat that. So shoulders away from the ears, elbows toward the floor, touch, and then press back to the downward dog. And one more time, shoulders spread, elbows down, touch, and then back to the downward dog. So we're now going to progress to looking at the headstand itself. So we come onto the elbows, interlock the fingers, and the first thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is pressing the forearm and the elbow into the mat. Okay, sometimes you see people, their arms roll out like this, so I don't want you to do that. I want you to press this part of the elbow, this part of the wrist, this part of the elbow into the floor. Sometimes you'll see different hand positions. Sometimes you'll see the hands together or slightly open or even like this. I prefer either hands like this or hands together. So before we go into it, you want to make sure that your shoulders are away from your ears, pressing down through the wrist, through the elbow, and you're going to place this part of the head on the floor between the hands. Again, shoulders away from the ears, pressing the elbows, press the wrist into the floor, and then lifting the knees up. And you can just be here, learning how to take some weight onto your head without your shoulders coming to the ears. So press into the wrists, press to the elbows, and shoulders away from the ears. Then you're going to walk in.
You start feeling the weight shift into the hands, to the head a little. And then from here, lift one foot up, come onto the ball of the other foot, and then come back down. And then change sides. Lift one foot up, the heel comes in toward the back. Come onto the ball of the foot, start feeling the weight shift, and then come back down. And then walk it back out, then come into the child's pose. And take a few breaths there.
It's important in the headstand that you don't just suddenly sit up or stand up, because all the blood has been coming towards your head. So if you stand up or sit up quickly, suddenly, you might get dizzy. You might feel a bit faint. So we always come into the child's pose first for a few breaths. So at this point, we may need to start working with the wall. Okay, so now we're over at the wall. The wall is your friend. If you don't have a wall, then you could use a friend. But if you don't have a friend, then you better use the wall. So you might want to bring your mat. I'm not using my mat because actually I'm taking most of the weight is in my arms. So I don't feel it so much in the head. But if you're just new to this, you might want to have your mat there. We're going to start close to the wall. We set it up again, same way, pressing to the elbows, pressing to the wrist. We bring the head to the floor, shoulders away from the ears. We walk in, coming onto the toe tips, shift the weight forward, lift one foot, and then the other. From here, you should feel the wall's very close. Try not to use it, but you know that it's there. And then from here, you go up again. The wall's right there if you need it. And so even if your feet are on the wall here, you're in pretty close to a good alignment for a headstand. So what you can do is just bend one knee slightly and then take the other foot away from the wall slightly. And what I want you to feel here is the movement of your hips, or the tailbone moving up toward the ceiling and the ribs drawing in. And then you bring that foot to the floor, to the wall, straighten the other leg. And again, feeling that movement of the tailbone, leg straight, ribs in. And then you're going to try and find your balance there. And then from here, bending the knees, coming to this tuck position, knees into the chest, and then slowly touching the toes to the floor, knees down, and come into your child's pose. And then we're going to move a little bit away from the wall. This time it will be one shin's distance away from the wall. So where your knees are, that's where your hands, your head is going to go. So it's about this position here. So I set it up, press into the elbows, press into the wrists, place the head between the hands, shoulders away from the ears, lift the knees, walk in, and again, lift one foot. If possible now, you can try taking both feet, and then you're going to take your feet, and there's the wall right there. And so from here, we can also work on this movement of the hips. So generally what happens in the headstand is the tailbone drops down toward the floor, the lower back arches. So we're going to, with the toe tips touching, lift the tailbone up toward the ceiling, and then straighten one leg, draw the ribs in, just on the toe tip at this point, and then you'll try to bring both feet together. And you just know that the wall's right there. So coming onto the toe tip, tailbone lifts, ribs in, shoulders away from the ears, and bring the feet together.
And then bring the knees in and slowly come down to the knees, coming into your child's pose.
And now we'll take it back to the mat. Okay, so now we've come from the wall and we're going to try freestanding headstand. So we set it up, pressing the elbows, pressing the wrists into the floor, coming onto the crown of the head, spread the shoulders away from the ears, lift the knees up, walk in, start shifting the weight forward, coming onto the tips of your toes, lift one foot, and then keep shifting forward, the other foot floats up, and then come down. We try both feet at the same time. So we lean forward, shoulders away from the ears, coming onto the toe tips, feel the weight shift, the feet float up, and then bring the heels in, and then from here, going into your headstand. We try to find the same alignment we had while we were standing, so without letting the back arch, draw the ribs in, lift the tailbone up toward the heels, legs straight, can spread the toes, and then keeping the internal rotation, start to point the feet, keep moving the shoulders away from the ears, pressing into the elbows, pressing into the wrists. Ideally, you should be able to press so much that your head lifts off the floor. And then bending the knees and slowly coming down. Take the knees to the floor and coming into the child's pose. Okay, so it's important that you have that strength through your arms so that when you're balancing in your head, you're not taking all the weight on your head, otherwise you might end up compressing your neck. So you should have the option, if you want to take your head off the floor, you press into your arms and you're able to lift up. So now we'll try the straight leg version. It's the same setup, pressing into the elbows, press to the wrist. Bring the head between the hands, shoulders away from the ears. Lift the knees up, lean forward, keep leaning forward, keep pressing the shoulders away from the ears. The feet start to float up, legs straight. And again, trying to find the same alignment of moving the tailbone toward the heels, ribs in, legs straight, pressing into the elbows, press to the wrists, slowing the breath right down. You can experiment with the feet, spreading the toes or pointing the toes, bring the heels together or slightly apart. And then as you come down with straight legs, the hips go forward as the legs come down, slowly with control. Touch the toes, come onto the knees, and again resting in the child's pose.